Listen, thank you so much for coming into the Plantation, man, and deciding to join me on the podcast today, brother.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So listen, before we get into the itty-gritty stuff, especially the U.S. politics, how about we start off by going, where did you grow up and sort of your background?
Oh, yeah. So I was born in Christchurch and lived there until I was 8. And then we moved up to Auckland. And since then, I've been living in Mangere, or Mangere, or Mangere.
Oh, Mangere. Or
However, yeah. And that's pretty much, where I grew up. What was it? Was there any other part of that question?
No. Very straightforward, man. Very straightforward. Because really, I really want to get into all the other stuff. So straight off the back, I first got a hold of you, well, at least heard of you, was through Twitter, which I'm sure a lot of other people maybe will know you from. And I guess my first question around that would be, how do you sort of see yourself on the Twitter sphere? Do you see yourself as a provocateur, a person who, a troll? How would you sort of describe yourself on Twitter?
Initially, it was just a place to come and observe how the other half live and think, because for me, it's very important to be able to at least know what people that don't think like you are saying, and to bring yourself out of that echo chamber. So that was the first thing. And then after that, it became an exercise in freedom of speech, just to be able to throw stuff out there that I know people don't agree with. But for me, it was never actually about whether they agreed with it or not, or even if they were going to react to it or not. It's the muscle that you have to exercise as a person, which is just expressing yourself. And I know a lot of people do it through many mediums, mostly through art and things like that. But we have become a society where you actually can't say what you truly think, feel. And I know a lot of people that will go through multiple layers of, I believe this, but I won't say it like this, and I won't say it like that. And you dilute very much what you're about. And so for me, that was the beginning of that. For me, it was just an intellectual exercise in flexing that muscle to be able to say, screw you guys. And now it's become, as a result of it, it's become more than that, where I believe, because most of my people who don't like me have blocked me, so it's no longer about that anymore. It's now about, well, you got this bit of a microphone, people know who you are in a certain way. Like, so many people talk to me about Twitter stuff, and I know for sure they don't follow me on Twitter. And, and so for me, then it becomes, well, now you've got this microphone, or people are paying attention, God knows why. And then it's about, well, how can you shape a certain conversation? So for me, most of what I do on Twitter, as opposed to other platforms, or as opposed to real life, is I will always say whatever narrative is not, or whatever voice is not being expressed adequately to my feelings in a certain conversation. So Black Lives Matter comes out, everyone jumps on it, puts the black square on their thing, and then my default position is George Floyd wasn't that great a character. And so I was going to say that. But then you still have to have a bit of intelligence to it. And I'm just like, this is too emotional. I'm staying out of the whole thing.
And
but
plus,
that's what I was, if I was going to tweet, I would have just thrown that out there.
But people will always be offended with whatever you put out, regardless, even if they agree with you, even if
people
you
should
didn't
write professional at being offended in their bio. Because, if I was to say to somebody, the sky is blue, they will find a way to say, no, it's not, it's red. And they'll or they'll find a way to say, it's your perspective, it's your male privilege, blah, 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 mansplaining, and I think more and more it's funny because the friends that are pretty close to me now all used to hate me vitriolically about 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. And most of my friends I have now are from Twitter, and it's come from that first point, which is, shock at an opposing view. And then if they decide to engage in an intellectual conversation instead of just talking points, then it becomes, well, I can understand where you're coming from, and then I can understand values, and then we get into similar values. And so most of my friends don't believe maybe 80% of what I believe, but it's within that 20% that we do quite a lot. Maybe not 80%, maybe 50%.
But speaking of that echo chamber, and unfortunately it happens, it's happening to me now, where certain people just start blocking you, and your whole aim of trying to not create an echo chamber, it sort of just creates itself in a way. So the only people that will be following you mostly would just be people who kind of agree with you or are your close friends, right?
Yeah.
So with your sort of, I guess, aim to sort of express your opinions on Twitter and stuff like that, have you ever had your own mind changed from someone's post or someone else's tweet?
Yeah, I can't say specifically, but I do get, for me, new information does inform, because perfect example, I was on a Fresh panel last week with Chanel Lal. We're two completely opposite sides of the spectrum.
Yep.
He's got his, way of thinking. But a friend asked me about it last night, and I said, I have a newfound respect for Chanel, because I can understand and empathize with the experiences that he's had in his life, which have led him to these conclusions and these things that he's willing to fight for. I think those are his pronouns. I'm not sure.
I'm sure we'll find out.
Yeah.
We'll find out once this video goes up.
But for me, I am much more open to that part of the conversation, to understanding, like, I don't expect a lot of my opinions will change, because I believe, it's your experiences in life which have led you to the position that you hold. And generally, you need more varied experiences to color that and change it. And so I don't think, debating or Twitter or arguments are going to change anyone's mind.
No.
But I do think in the big whole, whatever, that we call this world, there is a need for a variety of different ways of thinking, different ways of looking at the world, because that's the tapestry that makes it actually worthwhile in the end. And, for me, it's boring. It's boring sitting here listening to, most of my followers are just conservatives now. We all think the same, have a big hoorah festival, and everyone else, the leftists, we don't like them, blah, blah, blah. But does that lead us forward? Does it improve us as people? Does it grow us as people? Well, I think not.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, if you're sort of having the same conversation with the same people, your opinion becomes very, well, not opinion, maybe your perspective, becomes very, very narrow. So that's a good point. Do you find Twitter is the best space for that, though? Like, I've been on Twitter like 3 times, in the span before I started this podcast. And the first 2 times was absolutely horrendous. I mean, just the amount of people that trolls, you post up something that people just wanted to argue for the sake of arguing. You want to just express opinion, or even ask a question, right? You're allowed, like, you have someone post up something and you're genuinely curious. So you ask a question, then people just become absolutely like, how dare you ask these questions, I
don't know that Twitter's the best place for it, but Twitter's definitely the place where it's the fire where your beliefs and values are tested and your opinions are tested. And that's what I say to people. I'm like, get on Twitter, because that's where you figure out if you truly believe what you believe. I've probably been cancelled the most out of all Pacific people
I would
on
agree.
Twitter.
Yeah, I would say that too.
and I couldn't care less. Like, people like, how do you go through it? And I said, easy. There's a mute button. I just literally mute that conversation, and I move on with my life. 2 weeks later, I find out they're still quoting it and talking
threads.
about it. And I'm just like, cool. For me, it's I never take it personally in that regard, because it's just like, throw it out there, and see if you. There is some stuff where I've put it out there and I'm like, interesting. Like, I put out this tweet maybe at the beginning of the year about gaming, and I said, anyone who's older than, I think, 16 or 14 or 15 that plays more than 4 hours of video games a week, I don't, I seriously question,
A week or a day? A week.
Was it a day or a week? Must have been a day.
Okay, 4 hours. 'Cause I was about to say, well, 4 hours a week that's average numbers, man. 4 hours a day, maybe, yeah, for sure.
I don't know. Like, for me, I can't do that for, 2 hours in a week, let alone, 4 hours a day. And I got this whole bombardment of mental health and stress release and personal choice and blah, blah, blah. And what I realized is I'm like, shit, man, people play video games a whole lot more than I thought.
A lot, man.
I was like, this is crazy, you know,
Yeah,
because to my mind, it's always been something that, you know, once you leave high school, I believe, you don't play video games anymore. You got to play in the real world. That's my whole belief. Like my sister right now, I'm training her. She turned 18 beginning of the year, and she had something on her phone, some kind of video game, something on her phone. And I said, delete it. And she's like, oh, you know, I said, delete all the games from your phone. And she's like, why? I said, if you need escapism, go read a book or do something, you know, and it's just a different way of looking at the world. And people might be, you know, it might be too, rigid. But I just believe as an adult, your job is to play in the world, you know, go out there, take your losses, experiment, you know, but play.
There can't be a balance, though, you don't think? You think there can be a balance?
There can always be a balance. I mean, like, that's why I said, you know, more than, even if it was 4 hours a week, I think that's a lot. You know, 4 hours a week, you know. It's the same as morons who go and, you know, go to strip clubs. That's their form of release, or whatever. I'm not bringing it down to a strict amount of hours. I'm just like, you know,
you're talking about the activity in itself.
It's just a mindset around, you know, we have this amazing potential that we call life and this world. And I think we do a huge disservice when we decide to not participate in it, because life is happening to you whether you want it to or not. You know, it's going to happen. And most of the time we are living according to someone else's plan for our life. You know, even right now I'm thinking of running for local board in Mangere, because I just hate the fact that they've put in these big cycleways that for the last 3 years I've maybe seen 3 people use it, and only one of them have had a helmet, you know. And into my mind, I'm like, well, we have these things. They got these big concrete slabs to separate the cycleway from the main road, and yet where was there really a need for this community to have this here, you know? And who was consulted? Where was the consultation done? Who were the people that showed up? And so to my mind, things like that happen because I can tell you hand on heart, Mangere doesn't need that. But, you know, and then the other thing, if you're going to put cycle lanes in there, why don't you give us the freaking bikes? You know, like, hello, you know, that's the epitome of racism. Put something there that we don't have the capacity to use. You know, and so for me, it's things like that happen to us, and then we end up on the complaining side because we actually don't participate we don't play in the real world. Why not, you know, get out there, lobby a few white people, you know, and that's why for me, it's, yeah, that's my main thinking behind it. It's not so much the activity itself. It's just sometimes I feel like we're just not making our mark on the world like we should be.
And that's an interesting take on things. I mean, I think it's very difficult to sort of be 100% engaged in life all the time. Oh, yeah. I think it's very difficult. So I think in terms of people's outlets, I mean, I'm a gamer. I mean, just looking behind me, I've got a gaming setup here personally, but I don't play 4 hours every day, right? Obviously, real life happens, as you say. Go to work, you got responsibilities, you have to do that. I think everything needs to be in a fine balance, regardless of whatever your hobbies may be. I mean, there's certain hobbies, like strip clubbing is not a hobby I would condone, obviously, but, you know, I do think there's certain things that we could sort of say, okay, you know, that could be doing better things, but that's not as bad as others. But I'm using it as an example, of course.
There's degrees to the whole thing. Like that's the hard part about Twitter and having 140 characters. Even if you put it into a thread, you can never nuance. You can never truly express the nuances in an argument, in a perspective that you would need. And, you know, even if you wrote a whole thesis on it, it wouldn't.
No. I mean, what it doesn't capture as well is sarcasm, which is really unfortunate.
Twitter,
know?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you can put something down which is obviously sarcastic, you know, but then someone will take that as, I'm not a really big fan of Twitter. I enjoy it for the sense that it's a great platform to expose yourself to different ideas and different people. But what I find is you very quickly end up in a little corner where it's only things that kind of And maybe that's the algorithm. Maybe it's just the people who choose to follow you or choose to retweet your stuff.
It's the whole thing, though. It's life right now. Like Facebook is worse.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Facebook only gives you stuff that you want to see, that you want to hear. Instagram is the same. And it's just how it's just how life is going right now.
Speaking of sort of touching on what you mentioned a little bit earlier in terms of people getting out there and enjoying life or sort of participating in life, why do you think there's not a lot of people, I guess in your opinion, why do you think there's not a lot of Pasifika people doing that as much in terms of running for local government, having their say, trying to impact their communities?
We do. We have this huge amount of Pasifika people in local board, in council, now we have, in parliament. For me, the problem is that we're not holding them accountable to any real results. And this is our Pacific way of thinking. So whereas white people, I had to explain this a few weeks ago. I said white people generally, like, you believe that kid grows up, they move on, have their life, and you've sort of invested equally into every child so that they can live their own individual life. Whereas Pacific don't do that. We invest heavily into one person who's going to grow up and look after the family. And you're seeing it less and less, but that's the traditional way of thinking. So, and we give a certain amount of deference, amount of esteem, amount of honor to a person with the understanding that on the flip side of it, they should look after the family. So, take it to government and local board and leadership. We are more than happy to give them our votes and stuff with the understanding that they're going to take care of us and represent our interests when it matters. Then it comes to, well, we've been in the same shit for ages and nothing really changes. And yet we can't blame it on... In Mangere, for example, Labour has held that for 51 years now. Can you really say it's the white man's fault? How many white people do you interact with in your day in Mangere? Then it becomes where we start looking around, and the amount of people in the election said to me, they don't like National, but William Seal does nothing. And they said they can't bring themselves to vote National, but they're stuck in, and
the only other options is William Seal.
And that's... and then, so what happens is then you become disengaged with the whole process. Because you're like, well, wait a minute, why would I put so much energy into this and nothing changes? And that's where, this whole disenfranchisement comes in, and then they blame the system, and I was explaining to someone a month ago when they said, it's not the system's fault. I said, yeah, it is, sort of. And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, if I talk about systematic problems, or systemic racism or whatever, I said it's basically you look at the board or life or the game as snakes and ladders, and right now there are more snakes and not many ladders. So that's it. And I said, so then it's someone's job to go get rid of the snakes and put more ladders in there. The problem is that our leaders aren't doing that for us right now, and instead we're blaming the system.
System as a whole. Yeah.
That's how it's supposed to work. You step on the ladder, you go down. You know what I mean? Whose job is it to put more ladders there? And so instead of blaming the leaders who are supposed to be there to be pest control and get rid of these snakes and be builders of ladders, we just blame the system and say, I do not participate in the system, and you go and pout in the corner and fold your arms. It doesn't change anything.
Yeah, exactly. You don't change anything by just blaming generalizingly blaming the system.
The best way to get nothing done is to blame some big blob, vague entity out there. Yeah. Whereas I believe 100% in personal responsibility and total agency over your life. Yes, you might be absolutely... I said, yeah, the system... Okay, systemic racism, yes. Toxic masculinity, yes. I said, all of these problems, yes. Colonization, throw Christianity in there. You can have all of that. I will concede all of that to the argument. And then what? And that's what no one's been able to answer. Because I said,
Because there is this sort of infatuation for playing the victim card, though, isn't there? Like, for certain people in our society, in certain groups, mostly people sitting on the left side, there's some weird infatuation where, yes, they can identify all these things that's happened to them historically or happened to their people, not necessarily them in particular, right? They're usually advocating
Most of
for
the time,
something
not
else.
them.
Most of the time,
Most
not
of the time,
them.
not them. Most of these young brown activists have never had a day truly poor. Some of these activists, when I look at them and I look at where they're from, and people bring it up to me, and I said, I know that family. I said, they're middle class for South Auckland. They are not poor. They did not grow up in a state home. They have, which if you bring it down to the true essence of, if they were if we were to use the same stick on them, they are appropriating someone else's experience. And, I'm not going to name names here because that's not what this is about. But
You can name names if you want.
no, I don't need that much smoke before Christmas.
No, exactly.
But for me, I don't care anyway, because the reason why you will not be successful in that vein is because it's not truly yours. And I can't remember who said, on these T-shirts, I saw it was amazing. Only the hood can save the hood. And I thought to myself, absolutely, because, we've moved from white saviors to brown saviors, advocates, but these are just token brown people that they're throwing up, not people who actually grew up in the struggle, actually grew up with the values, actually grew up in the context. And once and the problem is that because we don't empower the people through their stories to say you have all that it takes despite all of this. If someone says to me, I've had this much and this much and this much hardship, I say to them, that's an amazing story. And you use that story as a way of empowering them to build a better life. Instead, we say, you got an amazing story. I'm sorry that happened to you. It's their fault.
Yeah.
And I will be your lawyer on your behalf. And I will give a voice to the voiceless, because right now, we need to stop the systemic oppression that's happened. And I'm thinking to myself, even if that was true, even if we do get to that point where the system concedes and says, here you are, you have 100% power over the system, they wouldn't know then what to do to truly help the people that they're assuming to help. And we've had, as I said, we've had decades of it now, of people assuming to speak for the whole of Pasifika society. And I had to explain this over this last week. I've been really working on what's the difference, because someone said to me, what's the difference between you guys and the left? And I said, the left believe that they can lobby and protest and scream and annoy their way, agitate their way into a seat at the table. I believe, I'm not sure about the right, but I believe that you can stack up everything against me. I challenge you, put up every barrier against me, and I will do what it takes to be better than you, to win, take your whole table and fuck you up on the way down.
How did you get that mindset, though? Because it's not a common one.
I
have to say.
I grew up really, really fob, and if anyone gets offended by that, just
fuck it.
It's just tiring. But I grew up, we were poor and we knew there's not a lot of money, but we never, ever, ever thought we were oppressed. I didn't know I was oppressed until I got to about third form at St. Peter's. I didn't know. Nobody told me.
Yeah.
I just thought that I was normal. I thought everyone, that's what I tell people all the time, I just thought everyone ate rice every day of the week and meat on Sunday, or, meat only once or twice a week. I just thought it was normal. I thought it was normal to eat lots of carbs and bread, and I thought a mince was meant to look like this, and you only use a quarter of it to feed 12 or 14. I just thought it was normal.
Yeah.
And so in that, because we were never told that we were oppressed or that we were any less than anyone else, I honestly believed we were told everyone else is good, but Samoan's the best. They said you can always trust a Samoan to understand a Samoan and to help a Samoan better than anyone else. Yeah. And for me, I just grew up with this idea, being so Samoan-centric. Samoa's the most beautiful place on earth. Samoan is the God's given culture to mankind. The whole world was made for Samoa. Like, that was my thinking. That because we grew up so patriotic and so much in our values and in our culture that I didn't know any different. And so when you grow up like that, it's just foreign. It's so foreign to hear people say, "Oh, well, I've succeeded despite." So you hear these stories now. I've succeeded despite coming from South Auckland, despite being Samoan, despite despite all the challenges. And then I get up there and I'm like, I've succeeded because I'm from South Auckland, because I'm Samoan, because of all the challenges. I said I've done amazing things in this life because of who I am and where I'm from, and that's the real switch now. And when I was in high school, like I said, I didn't realize that I was competing against Islanders until about third or fourth form, when my grades started slipping. And and I had been told, "Oh yeah, well, you're the smartest Islander in the year."
That's so condescending, though, isn't it? Like,
and I was like, "Oh, okay." So my grades are sitting at like around, I got a B, what's that, 72% or 72% on one of the things. And my mum looks at my report and goes, "What the hell is this?" And I go, "I'm chill, don't worry, I'm the smartest Islander." And she goes, "If I wanted you to be off the Islanders, I would have saved my money and sent you to Mangere College."
Send you back to Samoa.
Yeah, she's like, "I didn't put you in St. Peter's for you to become, the smartest Islander there." She said, "I want you to be the best, to be better than everyone else."
The best, period. Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't best. Now people always, they always qualify with the best that you can be. But no, that wasn't what she was talking about. Better than everyone else. Do what it takes to be better than everyone else. So if that means that, my high school life was hectic. I had orchestra at 7 a.m, and in school we had meetings in interval and lunch. Straight afterwards we had another, rugby training, and then another band. So get to school at 7 and get home by 10 o'clock, and it was normal. And in somewhere there you're supposed to study, and so study. 11, 12, 1, 2. It was just normal. Just do what it takes to be better than everyone else, because that's how you succeed in life. And for me, it's just a message that we don't hear enough now. Instead we hear, "Oh, well, let me drop the targets for you. I'm sorry. Oh, what? You need your Pasifika? Okay, we'll drop the entry level for you guys. Oh, you need your own special prize giving. Here, have your own special graduation ceremonies, blah, blah, blah." And I'm just like, I wouldn't mind that if it was Chinese having their own one too, and the Indians having their own one, and and then, God forbid, the white people have your own one.
Oh, goodness.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? But for me now, it's at that point where I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. I know what that's called. I mean, I did a lot of history in high school and after high school. I love history. That's called segregation. I said, that is actually called segregation. And they're like, "Oh, and Jim Crow, they say, separate but equal." Was it Jim Crow or apartheid? One of those. Where they
sounds more like apartheid from South
separate
Africa.
but equal.
Yeah.
And that's what they're trying to push on us now. Separate but equal. You have your own thing, but it's still equal. So, people are like, "Oh, well, the pass level might be lower, but when you get there into the course, you have to compete against everyone else." I said, "Well, what stupid logic is that then? Why did you drop it in the first place?"
With all that, 'cause we see it everywhere. You don't even have to look too far to sort of see that happening. Do you think that's purposefully being done in terms of putting us into different categories than others? Or do you think because we've kind of gone far to the left trying to establish our own identity here in New Zealand, that we've kind of gone a bit too far and segregated ourselves in a way?
Segregation initially was a way to insulate yourself from the white man's world. So Pasifika, we started up Pacific churches, Pacific groups, all of these things to, basically have a place where you feel accepted and you keep your identity and stuff like that. Now we can't claim that. We are not an actual minority in this country. Do you know that? I can go the whole week and not speak English in Auckland nowadays. Most places on the bus in all of Mangere, South Auckland, a lot of places go out to Avondale, go out to some other places. You don't need to speak English. I can speak Samoan, So then when it gets to that point, and we still hold on to this narrative that it's those guys' fault. Are you kidding me? White people are literally like, they're so stupid with the problems that they're making up for themselves. How many genders? Who can use a bathroom? What's our pronouns? Do you know what I mean? Oh, mansplaining, toxic masculinity. Oh, we need a first woman to be there, unless, of course, there's someone identifying as a woman. These aren't real problems for real people. These are problems for privileged people. You know what I mean? These aren't real problems. Real problems for real people is, how do I feed my kids? How do I decide whether this $20 goes into petrol, or whether it goes into muesli bars, or whether it goes into shoes, or whether it goes into a top-up? That's real problems for real people. Not all this other shit that they want to impose on us. So first thing I say to brown people is, don't get caught up in white issues. They're just dumb.
Just to play the devil's advocate, just a slight bit.
Yeah.
Right? Just a slight bit. How do you sort of differentiate each individual person's personal problems? Because I hear what you're saying in terms of there's real bigger problems out there, really. Like, really, there's some big fucking problems out there still. But then some of those problems don't necessarily all fall on each, like not every Pasifika person would go through hardships like that, but like yourself, like myself. How do you sort of say to them, listen, your problems, they're bad, but I think these problems are much more bigger, So how do you sort of quantify that in a way where, because I think to a certain degree, we all have to sort of look at each person as an individual as opposed to their group identity, because obviously group identity causes a whole bunch of issues in itself. But at the same time, if one person is saying, this is my struggle, this is my issue, can we really dismiss that?
Yeah, I can.
You can?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah? I got no problem. Like, I say to people, if you want truth, then you come to me. If you want sympathy, you go to someone else. And for me, it's, we've been talking about mental health now for a while. Everyone talks about it. Everything is mental health. And I agree with it to a certain point. You do have to have the right energy. You have to have the right surrounding environment and mental capacity and framework to be able to do this thing. Do this thing that we call life. In saying that, I still believe that we need to challenge ourselves more in the whole thing. So you come and tell me I have a problem, I'm heartbroken, something. And I'll tell you to get over it. Because, or you tell me you're poor, and I'll tell you I've seen poverty. I've been to India twice. And it's perspective that we're lacking right now. I'm not saying it's invalid. I'm just saying it doesn't help you. And for me, that's why I said, if you want the truth of moving you forward, maybe, and this is where, going back to the nuances and stuff, say someone comes and, and whatever, and they truly cannot function, then they need help to do that. Whereas there are other people that I think, and I say this to people all the time, I say there is no lack of education in our world today. We are the most overly educated generation and the most accessible. We have the easiest access to information ever. So it's no longer a lack of education. It's a lack of leadership and courage. We have so many options that we're afraid to pick one. We have so much stuff available to us that we are just overwhelmed with the variety. And so as we live, that's another first world problem. Do you know what I mean? Like in the third world, they don't get to choose what their occupation is. I'm sorry, they don't get to choose, what color their house is, because it's slabs of concrete, or maybe it's not even concrete. It could be a box. So these are still first world privileged problems that we're having. Now back to sorry to answer your last part about about not putting everyone into exactly the same categories. I think that's where, we have to be really, really careful about letting the context speak for itself. So I find it extremely hard to speak for Mangry now. Because I do not live the typical experience of someone in Mangry, even though I live there. But my grandparents bought that house. It's paid off. Cars are paid off. I've traveled the world extensively. I've had amazing experiences. I do not live the typical life of someone in Mangry, and I didn't have my formative years in Mangry either. So am I the right person then to speak for that? No, probably not. But then comes to the leadership part. For me, I am absolutely the right person to go in there and kick a whole lot of people out and say, you guys are all frauds, you guys do jack shit, and it's time for you to go. And now my job lately, especially in this last campaign, and even, today even, is to engage the real people who've lived those experiences and to say, you know what, you don't got to be an academic, you don't have to be anything smart, you just have to be genuine about telling your story and getting the results that you need to fix it for your people. And that's where nobody's having this conversation. Not Labour, not National, not nobody. They're looking at who's the best ambassador for these people, who's the best person to put up tokenism, who's the best, and we're thinking very, very Western framework. Whereas for me, it's just so simple. If you want the results, or if you want to know, who to listen to or who to represent the people, you actually get someone who's representative of that experience. And that's where I think we'll move to very soon. But we do need people, like I said, leadership and courage just to kick down the doors and evict whoever's in there.
Do you think the government will fix all our problems?
I'll tell you this right now. If you're watching this, if you believe that Labour or National or Trump or Biden is going to fix your problems, you need help. You need a lot of help.
I asked this question on purpose because I personally believe I don't think the government has our real best interests at heart. Not only, and we kind of touched on it already, not only do they not understand us as people or our communities, they're putting in people that also don't really understand our people or our communities. So with that said, right, we both agree, government is not going to be, they're not going to fix us.
Yeah.
Whoever's there, whether it's Palangi, Maori, Pasifika, whoever's prime minister, they're not going to fix our problems. So what do you think needs to happen to help? Because we can definitely identify we have problems.
Yeah.
We have one of the worst statistics in every measurable criteria you can sort of think of, right?
Yeah.
So then what do you think we need to do? Or if you have any ideas, what do you think would help manage that or make that a little bit more better for future generations?
Yeah, so the problem that we have now is mediocrity. And we think that okay is good or okay is great. And then you had the Sunpix Awards last week. You have the PBT Awards this week where people get together to pat themselves on the back for doing nothing. And I say that pretty openly, doing nothing in the face of skyrocketing homelessness, and child poverty numbers that are going through the roof, suicide numbers that are being absolutely crazy. Mental health numbers for males and females alike is just not good. So you look at that and then you think to yourself, well, we've got brown people in there now. We have a whole ministry dedicated to Pacific people. We have hundreds of millions of dollars being poured into this. Where is the problem? And the problem is the people that we've put in there have made a career out of being there instead of made a career out of results.
What do you mean by that?
So you got all these CEOs, you got local board members, you got these people, and their job really is sort of what we see more and more nowadays, which is gestures. Have big gestures. Whereas, so in health, and they put out a press release or something, and they say, we are now dedicating $200 million to Pasifika Health. Clap, 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 clap. Well done. The government cares about us. Whereas I've been observing this fitness phenomenon called Brown Pride that's been happening in Mangere De La Salle with De La Salle Old Boys. And they got this community together of about 100 to 200 people. And they said it's about fitness, yes, but it's also about mental health. It's also about belonging. And do they get any funding? No. They're running it totally as, people got to pay to be part of this fitness challenge. Okay. And then they work out, stuff from there. And then they're also doing food parcels. And they're also doing community outreach programs, mentoring for young kids coming out of high school into careers and stuff like that. actual results without funding. So for me, if I were to change the whole thing in government, I would audit every single person at the top, from the MPs and ministers through to the CEOs of these organizations, through to the managers, through to the caseworkers, through to everyone, and say to them, how many lives have you actually changed, and where's the proof? How how do we quantify that? It's a completely different story. But, just scattergunning everything like a lolly scramble, throwing shit all over the place, and then saying, oh yeah, job done. That's just not it. It just doesn't work that way, and if anyone who's been in a lolly scramble, all these people jumping
Gets
for
brutal,
it.
man. Gets brutal.
The smallest people never get the lollies. You got the big people at the top. That's what's happening. They get the lollies. The younger ones maybe get what they, and then, so how do the people at the bottom have to do? Exactly like in a lolly scramble. Wait for the big people to clear out, and then they go and see if they left anything on the grass. That's what's happening right now. Whereas it's supposed to be, especially culturally for us, the other way around. The big people are supposed to, go get it, and then bring it back and share it amongst the younger people, or the smaller ones, or people at the bottom, or whatever you want to say. And until we fix that, until we actually have targeted approaches, until we actually have accountability, real accountability, where you say, if you cannot point to 1 million families whose lives have been changed by your ministry, we will cut your funding by half. Set up actual targets, have someone accountable, and then, and then after that, they might not hit it. They might only change the life of 500,000 people. But right now, it's, spray and walk away. We don't know.
I'm sure there's checks and balances now, though, isn't there? I mean, there's no way a government's going to sort of invest. Think of mental health in particular, where I work. They've invested 120 million at the last budget. There's checks and balances, but then I guess I'm trying to sort of.
Who does it go?
How are you thinking? More stricter sort of oversight?
Like,
what are you thinking?
So say if you go back to the lolly scramble example, and then these big health providers have got this much money, and then at that point, then you have to say, well, there has to be a direct line from these people here to these people who you presume to help, and there has to be measurable improvements. Otherwise, we don't know what's happening. So, housing, for example, they put more money into housing. They say we've built more houses than ever, blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And yet the housing numbers, the waiting list has grown 20,000 or something. So then you say to yourself, well, wait a minute, you got given all this money, and yet the line's grown. Who's the problem here? And it might not be the Ministry of Housing, it might not be Housing New Zealand or whatever. It might be that, life has become more expensive for people, according in other areas that housing has had to be the one that, And so for me, I'm just saying we need to be more accountable and measure much more rigorously. So yeah, I guess stricter, but much more, we need to actually understand what it is, the outcomes that we're trying to look for, and be much more rigorous. For me, it's the accountability part, actually. Like, I do not believe, even in the National Party or any party, that if you've been there apparently advocating for your constituents and you get 8 years, 6 years, 9 years, 12 years, and the well-being and the measurable results of your constituents has gone down, I believe you're a failure. That's what you're there for, to help these people. Not just to say, oh yeah, well, we give more money to this, we give more money to that, we give more money to that, because we know for a fact, with the analogy, that these people might get more money, and they might say, okay, they may be, who knows, doing all this great work, but if on average, and it's not very hard, you just go ask people, do you think your life is better over the last
Take a poll,
People lie, but they don't lie that much,
Of course.
They're willing, and that's what I love about Pacific people. We're really willing to give our leaders the benefit of the doubt that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing for us, and that it's beyond their control. But sometimes, after a while, I'm just like, back to my philosophy in the beginning, don't complain about it, just be better. Get better leaders. Get people who are actually willing there. Like, we have, 13 Pacific MPs right now. If I were them, I'd hold the government by the balls and say, excuse me, we want $1 billion that you conveniently gave to Shane Jones last time to waste. We want it now for specifically for Pacific. And if you don't, we are going to make your life a living hell. You can't just parade us around like some, brown token monkeys whenever you want.
They may.
Well, I bloody hope they do.
Or they may just sort of go back to the status quo and just continue the same bullshit that's always been happening every election cycle.
Most likely.
I mean, because at the end of the day, my biggest gripe with government is it's not really the pandering. I mean, yes, the pandering really pisses me off.
Yeah.
It's not really the sort of poor allocation of funds or policies that don't actually help Pasifika people in particular. Yeah. It's the fact, and I kind of lost my train of thought just now, it's the fact that really what they're doing is waiting for the next election. So for me, whether it's me just being pessimistic or just slightly paranoid, but the government seems to be, whatever they put in place, it's not for longevity, No. It's mostly to say, listen, this is what we've done in the last 3-4 years.
Yeah.
Re-elect us again. So there's no sort of like, to a certain degree, and maybe this is too much to ask from a politician, which is to put everything on the line, which they should be doing, by the way, and just say, this is not going to be popular with my colleagues in government or this or that, but I think this is going to be beneficial for us in the long run. We're looking 10, 20 years down the line, but no one does that.
No,
they may say that they do.
We don't get it good. So anywhere where you have a monopoly, it's the customer that loses out. Anywhere. And you see this prime example, Pack and Save and Mangry, ripping off customers. They got banged with a $75,000 fine.
Yeah, I saw
but
that.
If I was to say, let's all boycott Pack and Save Mangry for 1 week, no one would do it. Monopoly. You know what I mean?
Well, else will they? No one's going to travel another 10, 15 minutes down the road to something else.
There's Countdown, which is right around the corner there, but it's not very good. And then there's the Countdown in Massey Road. There's Fresh Choice or whatever it's called, Super Value. That's in Mangry Bridge. But it's a monopoly. Do you know what I mean? So, and in the dairies, man, they were making a killing during that lockdown.
Can you imagine?
The one next door to me, they were making a killing during that lockdown. I could not believe it. One bottle of juice was like $8. Or $7.50 or something like that.
If you don't think that our society is so fragile that it will crumble under the slightest pressure, this COVID thing really showed and really exposed a lot of the underlying bullshit that's within our communities. And
so, like, problem we have with our people there, like you said, is they're working towards the next election and they're just doing what will keep them in.
That's what I think anyway.
According to it's true. So then we go to, we need to be much more, back to what I was saying before, we need to participate more robustly. Because if someone knew that if they didn't get any results within 3 years, their ass would be out of there, how hard do you think they'd be working?
Of course.
CEO makes $250,000 a year being a minister outside of cabinet, or something like that. Let's say 200,000.
He makes a decent living, shall we say?
Well, the starting rate for an MP is 180 grand. So he's definitely
more than decent.
So this is more than decent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then so you get to that, and for me, I say it's an abomination to be sitting on that much money, and yet your constituents are literally scraping by. And we give Jeff Bezos a lot of shit, for being $140 billion. Well, Amazon people are getting paid this much, but why do we not have that same energy towards our own people that are supposed to be our leaders? So we complain, there's no people who look like us, not representative, and then we finally get them in there, and it's the same old shit as the other guys.
Do you think it's similar to like when Obama came into presidency, where they're like, okay, we got him in.
Obama never lived a black experience.
No, true. But in saying that they saw a blackface, and people have been saying, finally, black president, we've finally broken down that barrier. Do you think it's sort of similar? It's like, listen, we're just happy to have someone who's brown in a position of power.
That's what happens when you beat down people so much, that they'll take whatever they get, because we've been trained to do that. We've been trained to, like me in high school, Well, at least you're the smartest islander. What the hell's that going to mean to anybody? And we've been trained to do, just take what you get, be grateful, at least you have a roof over your head and stuff like that. Well, actually, we should be saying to our people, well, why can't you be an MP? Why can't you go on local board? Why can't you make a difference in your community? Why do you have to put up with this shit? And it's a very different conversation. Instead of, and this is not from a blowing smoke up there, I was kind of, you can all be prime minister. No, you can't. You can't all be prime minister. You won't all make the All Blacks. But there are certain people there, and this is what I, as part of my hobby, that I go and find people with a certain temperament, with a certain passion, with a certain set of skills. And I'm like, hey, you ever thought of, because for me, absolutely, I think there are people there who will and can make a difference if given the right support and the right opportunity. And so all I'm really saying is the monopoly is going to end soon, because you can't, like I said, you can't beat down people that much and not expect them to get fed up with it after a while. So we'll see. I mean, or you can. We've seen that in America too. Democrat cities absolutely just rotting.
Oh God, there's a big movement of populations from all those blue states, eh? Far out. It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Don't California, my Texas. And now look, Arizona is a toss-up. I can't believe it.
Well, that's all people migrating out of California, though, eh? Like you're saying, it's just, well, it's so funny because they sort of was so segued to the USA, but it's so funny because they sort of complain so much about the Republican Party and the party that's not, Democrats, and yet they're all willing to move to these red states. They're all willing to move, which is what I think is what's happening.
I got friends from Chicago who moved down to Arizona because housing was cheaper, it's better weather, life was better, and then they complain it's a bit slower paced, and it's a bit more old-fashioned and stuff. And obviously there are some things that can be improved, but fundamentally, why did you leave again?
Yeah. Well, a lot of the funny thing about that is, like, I've got, as I'm sure you do, have a lot of relatives that live in the States and stuff, and all of them live in California on the east or the west coast, right? And it's just such a hilarious thing to sort of see when people sort of move to another state, and then they're just so surprised that it's not. Oh, why is Utah not like California? Well, because we call in Tongan we call it Siolalo. They they look down on the middle states. Middle America. They sort of just think they're just flyover states. You only go over there as a stopover, and yet these are the places where elections are made. So, but I think that's why you see in this recent one, why most of them were so close. Maybe it could be voter fraud too, but it's a lot of these people moving from these sort of the west and east coast into more central, which I think is why it was quite close.
Yeah, Nevada, Arizona, those kind of things. Even Texas apparently was in play, but I didn't see it. Florida wasn't having a piece of it. Florida was not, But it's funny though, because then we look at our own migration here on our side of the world. The ones who moved from New Zealand to Australia, very, very seldom do they ever want to come back. The ones who move from Australia, because the money is so much better. I was calculating this with a client. I was trying to tell them, and I said, the household income for a Pacific family, or the access that they probably have in New Zealand, may be 60 to 80K.
Yeah.
Yeah. The household income...
You talking about median or max?
Yeah,
median. I think it'll be much lower than that. I think you're looking at like 20, 40, to be honest. For median Pasifika household earners. Yeah. Then numbers, whatever. Sure.
It was for this particular... So I cut out the bottom completely, and I moved it up a bit.
Okay.
So it was more for, I was talking about, people who can afford to spend on stupid shit. So that kind of Pacifica.
Oh, right.
So I cut out the bottom and moved it up. Yeah.
So middle class up.
Yeah. Middle class Pacifica.
Yeah.
60 to 80. Middle class Pacifica in Australia is 250,000 to 400,000 household income. Because the difference is in thinking. in Australia, they can't get on Centrelink. You got 5 adults, so all 5 have to be working, and say that they all start at 50K each. That's $250,000. Over here, in most households, we have 1 or 2 full-time people, 2 non-workers, and 1 part-time worker, maybe, and none of them get paid well. Yeah, so it's a very different way of thinking, which leads to a different culture, which leads to a different expression of that culture. So most of my friends in Australia, they come back to New Zealand, they're like, how can you guys
How do you live
here?
like this?
How do you
Exactly.
live
My cousins
here?
say the exact same thing. They go down to the supermarket and they're like, what the fuck? It just even just the cost of living here is
It's like,
ridiculous.
Like, how do you live here when you
why
guys
are you
make so
still
little?
here?
Yeah.
That's what they ask. Why are you still here?
Whereas then we get New Zealand, because we have to make this much last for this long, then comes creativity. So in New Zealand, you get a certain level of creativity that you do not get in Australia. And also because Australians just focus on work. Any work. Like
No,
they're not about creative work. They just have a job, any job, slog it out, blah, 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 do time, do overtime, do time and a half, take the money, all of that stuff. Whereas in New Zealand, we are more particular about, well, if I'm going to do something, I want to be able to at least enjoy it, or to express myself in it, or to see something out of it, have some kind of purpose, fulfillment in it.
The privilege of choice, you know?
It's the privilege of having no money and still being able to choose. It's just 2 different mindsets.
Yeah, of course. That makes sense. I mean, if you don't have a safety net, it's make or break.
Yeah.
You know? So that makes sense. I mean, if you come here, yeah, you can go on the benefit. It may not be paying you as much as it's going to work, but people live on the benefit, you know?
I don't know how.
Well, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
Oh man, there's you see the Greens are sort of still proposing to increase the benefit to a living wage. Well, what's your? I'm kind of guessing what your thoughts will be on that.
I would absolutely be for it if we had enough people to pay for it, like enough working people to pay for it. Absolutely.
That doesn't come into account though, does it?
Yeah.
Like how do we pay for things?
The amount of people that are barely working right now, the amount of small businesses that can't actually afford to hire more people, because what these people don't understand is business is not as easy as you think.
No.
Like you might have a killer few weeks, and you might have just absolutely devastating few months. It is that whole roller coaster, and so it's huge risk. And it's a risk to take on an employee, not be able to pay them, because you're paying them and then you pay yourself. It's huge. So I would be absolutely for raising benefits if we could find a way to pay for it, through. And the only way we can pay for it then is to have more taxes, and people don't even make enough as it is. Are you going to tax them more? Are you kidding me? And then if you're going to tax them, can you at least put it back into the communities that, where the workforce is coming from? Do you know what I mean? There's been one pothole on the way to Mangere Town Centre from that roundabout that I swear to God they do that way just because they were fucking with us.
I heard you mention that on Hannah Schmidt's show as well, and I was like, oh shit, the pothole's still there. What the hell?
Like, I'm just like, what? Like, are you kidding?
Use a cycleway, bro. What the hell?
Yeah, well, they put these big concrete things on it. Like, give us the bikes. Give me a bike. I'll gladly use the bike lanes.
I would never bike. No.
Give me the bike. I'll gladly use the bike lanes. I'm okay. I'm shaking the whole set here. Not an earthquake. Guys.
No. Calm down.
But it's just this whole thing around the minimum wage and stuff, and I know people that are gaming the system. It's just so
can't be helped.
So
there's going to be people like that.
If it was truly up to me, I would find the people that need to work, that can work, and send them to work. I would find the people that really need help on disability and increase their.
How would you do that though? Because this just adds to the complication of things. Is that what constitutes able-bodied work, really? I mean, do we count? Obviously, physical disabilities would sort of, but even people with physical disabilities can work in certain jobs. Mental health comes into play for that kind of stuff. I mean, I hear what you're saying, right? And it makes complete sense to me. For someone who's very big on getting out of the system, getting into employment, doing the work that you need to do to support yourself, right? It then becomes very difficult because this is me just imagining being in power as well.
Yeah,
I know what would probably be good for people. But then when you break it down to more specifics, you go into a more deeper level. It then becomes very complicated about who's who, what's what, and
Well, like on Guy Fawkes Day, there were so many fireworks in Mangere.
Worst day of the year for me. Hate it.
And I think to myself, these things are freaking expensive. How can we afford this if we are so poor? Like, okay, the alcohol and stuff, okay, we're addicted. Okay, you can say that if you want. There are people with genuine addictions. The gambling, okay. But the fireworks?
Could be just one family. The middle class family of
Are you
Mangere.
kidding me? No. No. Anyone who thinks it was just that one there is no way. I said, I'm not an idiot. I said, it was blowing up all over the place like a war zone in Mangere. So then it comes to that then, and stuff like that. And so to answer your question, I would absolutely compel people into work. I would tell them, I found you a job and you will show up to that job and you will work. And then they're like, oh, well, what about kids and what about blah, 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 and all these other things. I think that because it's a very complex issue, there's no straight fix way of doing it, and if there's a parent that has to stay home with kids and the kids have this and that, but I still believe one parent can raise up to 4 or 5 children.
There's plenty of people doing it now.
So
doing it well.
So the other one can go to work, and you gang more. Who's gonna do it?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And then you're gonna be, oh well, that's privilege, that's your elitism coming through and stuff like that. And I'm just like, okay, but what's the alternative? The alternative is you barely live, and you're both sitting there. You barely live on whatever, and we can increase it, but it's not gonna be. We can't increase the benefit to anything substantial. Like, we actually can't. We literally do not have, people who don't understand economics, we can't print that much money without doing the work that takes to exchange the value with the market.
We actually end up in a much more worse position because we either start increasing taxes everywhere possible, so businesses start to fail because they can't afford that, start borrowing, so then now we owe other countries more and more money.
And interest.
Interest as well, so I think you're right. I think in the sense when people just say, why don't you just increase the benefit? It's like, well, sure, we can do that, but that doesn't fix
why don't
anything.
I just talk to the money tree theory? Like, why didn't I think of that? Why don't I just pull it out of my ass? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not that simple. And taxes, who got hit hardest by the petrol tax? The poor people.
Oh, yes.
The people in Mangere. I know people in Mangere that work in Hobsonville, that work in Albany, that work in Henderson, that need petrol. You could give us the bike and they wouldn't be able to get to work.
Yeah.
They need the petrol. My rich friends, when the petrol tax was announced, they just went and got hybrids and electric cars. Most of them got electric cars.
Easy for them. Yeah.
Easy. Who actually pays that petrol tax?
Yeah,
the poor people.
Sense.
Who actually pays the smoking tax?
Yeah, the poor people who
the
are
poor
addicted
people.
to smoking.
Who actually pays the alcohol taxes? It's the poor people. These are punitive taxes that are fundraising on the backs of poor people. It's actually punitive when you know someone's lifestyle, when you know someone's experience, when you know what someone's going through, and say, you know what, screw you, we'll tax you anyway.
Yeah.
And then turn around and say to them, oh well, why are you poor?
It's a good example of how disconnected the government actually is to the people who are actually in need of supports.
And back to my thing, snakes and ladders.
Yeah.
We didn't need those extra snakes in there. Just take them out. And nobody's going to support this. You're encouraging smoking. I'm not encouraging smoking. I'm just saying, they're going to smoke anyway. Hello? They're going to smoke anyway.
Taxing them is not going to stop them. If anything, if you make it harder for them to buy, you're probably going to look at an increase in crime.
Well, that's the other thing. How many dairies now have had to put bars up because of how many, and
West Auckland?
The dairy next door to me, they get robbed all the time. And it's hardly ever for the money. It's for the cigarettes.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure. If you look at Police 107, at every single robbery you see, the first thing they go for is for the alcohol and for the cigarettes. That's all they go for. Money, if they have time, they may try to rob the cash.
Hey, by the way,
the cash.
But they're like, oh, it's locked. Give me the cigarettes.
Yeah, I'll take the ciggies. That'll be good enough.
You know what I mean? And these aren't these aren't organized crime, crime kind of people, real, like Ocean's 12 kind of people.
No,
These are kids who are opportunists who are dumb. And they decide, what are we going to do? Let's hold up the Indian guy and take some cigarettes and have a good time.
The bad thing about that is that more often than not, especially out West Auckland ways, is that turns very ugly very fast.
Very fast.
The stabbings,
very fast.
And
because
so
these kids panic,
Oh, yeah. I don't think they go in with the mindset they're going to kill someone.
No.
I think they're going in, we're going to get some cigarettes, we're going to have a great fucking time after. And then it turns
We all
into
know
absolute
these
shit.
kids. We all know these kids. We all have them in our families. They don't think things through.
No.
They didn't go to the whole, planning ahead course and anything. It's
The
just
planning
like,
ahead course.
It's just
Yeah.
so but then to to turn around and be like, well, these are the hotbeds of crime and stuff, and I'm like, well, to a certain point it is systemic. You guys really are not looking at this properly, because like I said, even this whole marijuana thing, and I keep telling people, they're like, it'll be good, then that way we can get into it. I said, I have friends in Colorado and in Arizona and in California who are literally saying they're waiting for us to open. And these guys are already multi-million, if not billion-dollar million-dollar companies. I said, who the fuck do you think you are going to compete with them? Are you kidding me?
Man.
Are you
No
kidding
way.
me? I said, and then thing about it is when the real market goes up, the black market also increases in price. So just leave it the way it is right now. Cops won't even arrest you most of the time unless they're looking for something to get you on.
No. I mean, I work pretty closely with the cops, and most often than not, if they pick you up on it depends on the amount, but no one fucking carries around a massive amount worth.
The only reason
at.
why they'll really ping you is if they're looking for something to ping you for. Like if there's something else that you might have done, and they're like,
yes.
I can't get you on it, but I'll get you on this. It's.
I think it's more to the case that it's usually when you see people go to jail and they'll focus, he only had like a tinny. No, this guy probably assaulted someone maybe a week ago and has an active warrant for something. He just happens to have some marijuana.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
at
It's
the time.
the thing that it's the thing that actually gets them, but it's not. We're putting you in jail because of your one tinny. And that's the nuance that was lost in the whole debate. But more than that, I'm like, do you really think this is a good thing for our communities? Like, if you actually think, I don't believe that anyone genuinely thinks that it's a good idea.
I do, but in a certain context. So as I said before, I work in mental health.
Yeah.
Everyone must obviously knows about the massive synthetic wave of cannabis that rolled through, kill people.
Yeah,
lots
kill
of
people.
people. Majority of those people were clients that I worked with, people in mental health, because they come with comorbidities and stuff like that. I think, and this is just in this context, I think if they had access to cannabis, natural cannabis, I think that would sort of at least eliminate at least a majority of that market.
They do. Most people have.
No. I would say synthetics would be, because it's easily made and easily accessible.
Well, there we are. We learned something here today. Yeah. You don't actually have that much access to it. For me, this is speaking for someone outside of the context. I've always just thought it was very easy to get a hold of if you had the money.
Yeah, I think you think of middle class people who are the real people that are pushing the legalized cannabis people.
Oh.
But I think if I'm thinking more the people who are affected negatively the most, it would be the mental health, group of people.
There we are.
I mean, at the same time, I can't condone it 100% because it does.
For me,
create,
I can't, because I'm like, are you kidding me? Like the amount of idiots who are just going to get on that. And I'm like, this should not be for everyone.
It's definitely not for everyone.
But the same way I think, there are some people who I really think should just be banned from drinking because they just don't know how to drink. We should get like a Warren of Fitness certification to say, this guy does not horse it when he drinks.
Yeah.
And this is the amount of bottles that you're allowed. And blah, blah. It should be some kind of drinking test or something.
There should be something.
Because, to that same extent, I'm like, there are some people, they have their weed and it's fine. And then there are others that I'm like, you should probably not touch that ever again. No. It's not good for you.
I mean, I do agree with, and this also very pains me to say, I do agree with some of the stuff the Greens have been saying when in terms of people are using it anyway, unregulated, unchecked. I mean, that's the one thing I agree.
People are using meth too.
Yeah, true.
Are you kidding me?
True, but I don't think we're going to all say that meth has any medicinal benefits whatsoever. There's an argument for both sides.
Medicinal marijuana is already legal.
Inaccessible though. I mean that.
Is it expensive?
It's super expensive.
Oh, is it?
I know. The only
why the fuck they always make these things expensive? Why don't you?
Well, see, so
why don't the
thing.
Greens go and lobby government to make that cheaper?
Because it's already illegal. That's why.
Go and lobby them to make it cheaper instead of opening everything
too.
to.
I would
just
back
go
that.
make it cheaper.
I'll back that for sure. But yeah,
I got an idea. It's expensive, so let's just open it up to everyone.
The weird thing is, not a lot of people thought this referendum was for medicinal cannabis, which really goes to show how much people really don't know what the fuck is happening.
They have no clue.
It's like, it's for medical purposes. Like, no.
No, it's not. That's already legal.
All you have to do, you have a phone, Google medicinal marijuana in New Zealand. It's legal.
It's already
Your
legal.
GP can prescribe it to you.
Yeah.
So I agree. Maybe they need to be lobbying to make that cheaper. Yeah,
well, make it. I'm totally for medicinal marijuana. Make it cheaper. All of that stuff. You know, whatever. Make it like a Panadol.
Oh God.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But are you kidding me? Let's just have it all open there. Everyone can grow their own plants, and everyone can everything. The big companies can come in, and we're gonna have dope bars and like shisha bars. Are you kidding me? Are you asking for the product? This country's productivity is already going down the toilet. You want everyone to be off work?
Sure. I don't think they were advocating for stores though, were they? It was just legalized just for personal use. I don't think they're actually saying you can open up a.
Were they?
I don't think so. I don't think there was no cafe thing. Because that was my thing. I was like, man, how is West Auckland in particular going to liquor stores?
No, they said I don't know about cafe. No, they It would definitely be dispensaries.
Dispensaries, sure.
Yeah.
But I think that's like almost
maybe
like
not cafes.
maybe like pharmacies. Can you imagine just lining up to a pharmacy to get a titty pack? That would be ridiculous. You know what? To a certain degree, I wanted to see it happen because I really wanted to see what the fuck would happen. That was honestly a big part of my thinking was, I'm actually really curious what the fuck would happen to New Zealand if this was legal.
Go to Colorado. Are you kidding?
Go to California too.
Go to Colorado, those potheads. California still has the population capacity and the immigrants to do the work.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas go to Colorado,
not so much.
And look at the mess that those potheads are in right now. And it's for me like big picture, world picture. We are not competing with ourselves in New Zealand, or not against Australia. We're competing against China, Hong Kong, Japan, the Arab nations, India. That's where we're competing. Do you think these guys are going to be... They already outwork us.
Yeah.
Once
that market opens up here.
Do you think these guys are going to be like, oh yeah, New Zealand's just cruising? That's what I really don't like about where we're heading right now. Is we've just got this whole chilled mentality. Well, everyone agrees globalism is a big part of the world now. We're just so connected. So, and we all see that, like we order shit online all the time. That's not from here. So when you do that then, and your competition is some kid on the other side of the world who wakes up at 3:30, 4 in the morning into factory, blah, 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 and works his ass off. And just chill. And
we can't compete
they're
with
going to fucking eat our lunch.
We can't compete with that.
They are going to screw us really big because if we think, China's bad right now, you go to China, it's like the future. You got buskers. They have those QR codes and that you can donate. They got the buskers. Over here we still got we need the. I feel sorry for those guys at the window washing on the road because they always ask for change and I'd never have any coins.
Neither.
They need to get one of those things where you tap and
because then you got no excuse. Automatic, I don't care cash. That's all right, brother. I take credit cards.
Automatic $2. Here you go. Ding, ding, ding. You know what I mean?
Man.
And that's what they do in China. The buskers tap and that's it's so many. And yet we're here. I
think a big reason for that is we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier in terms of the level of desperation there to sort of make it and live is a lot more higher than here in New Zealand, which is what we're lucky about, right? We can't sort of just sort of, you know, say like, oh, you look, you know, we need perspective for sure. If we want to talk about absolute poverty, you, like you mentioned, you just have to go to India, you have to go to South Africa, and that's absolute poverty, right? So to a certain degree, that should be shaping our perspective on where we are now, but it's hard to, right? It's hard to when you're here, you're poor in the New Zealand context, you know, and then no one's sitting at home sort of thinking, oh man, I've got like $3 to my name, I'm on the benefit, blah blah blah. But man, that Indian guy is doing way worse than me. I'm pretty good, man. You know, I think to a certain degree there needs to be certain hardships, and you know, I agree hardship can be a good thing. It can be used as a really big motivational tool to get people's asses into gear. But at the same time, as a father, I don't want my children to go through hardship, you know? So I this is my dilemma at the moment, right? Because I think hardship shaped a lot of what I sort of, you know, got through, and my wife as well, and a lot of members of my family, you know? But at the same time, it's like, it's hard, you know?
There's a quote, and it says, there are only two reasons why people change. Their minds have been opened, or their hearts have been broken. And I think it's true, you know, and a lot of the time we try to educate people, we try to, you know, the amount of times I tell people, you know, go read this book, go read this, listen to this podcast, watch this on YouTube, you know, we have literally everything at our disposal. And we don't want to. Until something happens, and then you have to.
Yeah.
You know, and then you have to get your A into G and have to really just, you know, and unfortunately that's what we are. We're just reactionary as people. And it's sad because, like, you know, like you said, for your children, for everyone's children actually, a lot of pain, suffering, a lot of people going to slip through the cracks, a lot of other things come out of it, but it's life.
That's true.
It is life. I have not found any, and I've traveled quite extensively, I have not found anywhere that has managed to avoid pain and suffering.
I agree.
You know, and maybe someone has, but, you know, I haven't found it yet.
Oh no, I think we're thinking of those like billionaires who sort of who take overseas, you know, for a 2-week holiday every so often. I think that is something that that people need to come to terms with. I think, you know, because no one wants pain at the end of the day, right? No one wants hardship. They will do all that they can to sort of avoid it. Hence why we do have a lot of people who use drugs, commit suicide, all these things, which is unfortunate. And that's really, that's really downplaying suicide. Like, oh, that's unfortunate. What I mean by that is they miss out on an opportunity to sort of learn from their mistakes. I don't think there's anything, and you mentioned it very, very, very eloquently before. You know, it's like, I don't think there's any greater lesson in life than falling down and being able to pick yourself up.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think if you're given everything, and we know people who are given everything and don't have to worry about jack shit, you know.
I tell my friend she is middle class for New Zealand. So she's upper middle class for New Zealand. I'm middle class for South Auckland. She's upper middle class for New Zealand. And I tell her, I said, you know, people like you, I said, I'm going to eat your lunch in a few decades. I said, people like me who, you know, who just had to fight for everything. I said, once you've got the fight in you, it just never really goes away. And because you're always worried someone's there to take it. And that's me. Like, you know, traveled. People always say to me, you know, you've done stuff, traveled the world, done this. You know, you've lived a rock star life, and then come back and then start a business, get into politics. And why? And I go, because I just believe that I'm not better yet. You know, I'm not the best. Back to my mum's whole thing. You know, I just don't believe I'm the best yet. Yeah. I believe there are other people out there that if we had to face off, they would wipe the floor with me. You know, and that's my thing. That's what keeps me moving. Whereas easily I look around in New Zealand and I'm like, you're all a joke. And we will all be laughing in a few years' time. You know, and bring us back to Twitter. That's why I really don't mind Twitter. Because maybe when it's really bad, a few hundred people decide to jump on and drag me and stuff. But I'm a B-list Croatian celebrity. I have millions of people around the world that love us, and that send us stuff, and that, you know, and that send us messages, that support us, I got amazing, incredible friends around the world, anywhere, in any continent that I land, and I'll be like, hey, I need something, you know, I'm stranded or something, and easily they would help me. And when you put into that perspective, then I'll just look at them and I'm like, well, who the hell are you losers?
Yeah.
You know, who the hell are you guys?
Yeah.
Who are these guys? You know, who asked you guys? You know, and for me, that's the game now. Is because I don't bother with people on Twitter that much. For me, the game now is to really, that I've set myself, is to move our Pacific people from the bottom to the top within one generation. And people, and people are like, oh, well, you know, how do you do that? And I said, well, easy, going to what we've talked about today. Just skip the middlemen, find where the value's needed, and exchange the value, and bring it all back, and subcontract. So right now, I got a group called Young POC Professionals, and we're just building capacity now. You know, architects, academics, you know, everything, marketing, communications, graphics, all kinds of things, building capacity. And then over the next year, it'll be to go get big contracts. Just go straight to the big contracts. I'm not talking like, you know, a few thousand. I'm talking about 100 million, 300 million, 500 million, billion-dollar contracts. And then bring them back. And the one prerequisite, the one thing you have to do is the money has to stay in the community. So you can't put it on Upwork and send it to some guy in Sri Lanka. It has to stay in the community. So then now we have the resources to be able to say, hey, you know, you got a cousin, he likes to draw, he wants to be a cartoon artist, okay, you know, throw a couple of $100 at him every week, and he better come up with a cartoon for this, you know. And this person is a graphics person, and you, what do? Nothing. You're just good at talking. Okay, well, yeah, we'll find some, you know, be a voiceover person, you know, or set up audio stuff, or, you know, blah blah blah. And you learn, subcontract your auntie and your uncle and your mum, and your uncle now has...
Essentially creating jobs yourself.
Yeah, you create jobs yourself instead of waiting for somebody to come and do it for you, waiting for those job applications to come up, and then you go to the recruiters, what the fuck do they know about anything? And then you go to these guys, and then you got to fit into some kind of box, give me a CV. And, you know, and then you got to pay these people a certain amount. I'm like, no, I said, I was really, you know, I had this out with someone last week, and I said, the biggest problem is that you're expecting us to pay them. And they're like, well, you don't want to pay them? I said, no. I said, but Islanders, we pay in our own way. You know, I said, if someone does something for me, I pay them in 2 boxes of Heineken and $50. You know, and they're like, oh, well, that's not enough. And I said, yeah, but reciprocally, if he needs something from me, I don't mind getting paid in, you know, in the fish and chips, you know, and a bottle of Coke Zero. And we've eliminated the need for the exchange of money altogether. And then you're like, well, okay, you have to live in the real world and pay the power and stuff like that. Yeah, but at least for these services, I don't need to go rip you off. You know, I know you got no money, you know I got no money. Why we need to rip each other off for?
So essentially you're creating an avenue for people to start getting shit out there and getting shit done, basically. Start
getting some results, start getting some runs on the board, you know, like that's what I tell people all the time. I'm like, you want to start a business, start working for free. Go up to anyone and say, I'll work for free. You know, just get some runs on the board as long as they're willing to give you a testimonial. You know, and say, you know, and as long as they're willing to say, hey, you know, this person did really well and stuff like that, and they're willing to do this, and, you know, and that's, whereas we just got this, oh, you know, I need to get the money up front, I need to do, you know, whereas you just don't have the credibility in the marketplace to demand that, or, you know, you don't have the clientele which is able to pay you what you think you're worth. And it's a completely different conversation. But my whole belief is, instead of you giving the money to him gives me, you know, and we got this same dollar that's just going around 3 times, many times, you know, is you keep your money, he keeps his money, I keep my money, and we all work for each other for free. But then we go out and bring in big fish, big kill. And then I'm like, okay, here you are, guy, here's, you know, 200K, here, you do what you want with it, blah, blah, blah. But it has to stay here.
To work within the community.
Has to stay here. And that's my hypothesis on
interesting.
how you lift a community out of poverty.
Well, listen, it's worth giving it a go because fuck, nothing else is fucking working, is it?
Well, yeah, especially since we just worked out we can't raise the benefits.
Yeah. This actually kind of funnily segues into what I wanted to also ask you about. So, in sort of researching you before you coming through here,
Yeah.
you're actually quite a big deal in Croatia.
Yeah.
No, kind of. Like, you are a pretty big fucking deal in Croatia.
Yeah.
How the fuck did you end up... How does a Samoan boy... And I'm sorry for swearing so much, but this is how interested I am in this journey, is that how does a Samoan boy go into singing Croatian music and then playing in Croatia for, all these people? How did that start?
We had a Croatian teacher in high school. He taught us a few songs, and then we learned a few more songs. And he connected with the Croatian Society in Auckland, went on a few tours with them, and then it sort of cooled down, and then the World Cup happened in 2018, and we did a video that went viral. And we were then getting invites from all around the world. And I said to my brother, I said, should we try this? And he goes, do you reckon we can? I said, yeah. So, yeah, and then from there we just, we got some funds together, went to Croatia, did a series of concerts, and Croatia to Australia, Croatia to Paris, Australia, and then, we were just, like my other brother likes to say, just glorified buskers. We just go and show up and see what we could get out of it, and then next thing I knew, just before New Year's 2019, I got a call from Phoenix, and they're like, hey, we want to bring you over to the States. And we're like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah. So we went over for that. And then when people heard we were in Phoenix, then New York wanted us, and Chicago wanted us, and then Cleveland wanted us, but we didn't have enough time. So I came back, went to Melbourne, went back to Cleveland. And then, and after that, when people saw us in America, then they were like, oh, come to Germany, come to Switzerland, come to Austria. So I went to Switzerland, Germany, Austria a few times, and went around there, and then went back to Croatia, back to New Zealand, back to Samoa, and then back to Australia. And so about 42,
everywhere.
42 weeks of the year last year, we were traveling and flying around.
Shit.
And we went New York 4 times, and Chicago 7 times, and Germany 4 times, and Croatia 5 times. And this is not like, just go in between here, go over the border, come back. This is like,
no, this is proper
went
travel.
to Croatia, came all the way back to Australia or New Zealand, went all the way back to America, came all the way back, Toronto and back, UK.
Your air points must have been skyrocketing.
Yeah,
man.
I was supposed to be gold status on Qantas by July this year, and that
didn't work
happen.
out.
Yeah.
Far out.
Yeah,
So what was it about? I mean, was the Croatian language just something you just decided, fuck it, I'm just going to learn this for fun? Or was there something about it that sort of drew you to it?
For me, initially, it was just, it was cool. It was
Just something to do.
Yeah. I was just told
Something
to do
different. Oh, you're told to do
it. I
it.
was told to do it because we were, I was in fourth form, and we went, I was the tuba player for our concert band, and we went to Italy, Croatia, and Slovenia. And the head of music said, hey, learn this song when we get to Croatia. If you do it well, they'll love you. And so I did. And, I had people crying and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, this is different. And then got asked to sing at funerals and weddings and that one song. And then a few years later, they're like, you know what, you should probably learn another song now. So added one more song. And then 2 years later, we had 7 songs. And then a few years later after that, we had 15 songs.
Wow.
And now me and my brother can do about 4 to 6 hours of Croatian nonstop.
Jeez. And you're fluent in it, obviously.
I can stay alive. I can stay alive in Croatian. So there's so many times when we were in Germany, for example, and we're driving around, what is Germany? Somewhere. And I started the car, and I turn around to my brother and I go, we haven't spoken English for the last 4 hours. And he's like, here? We just have those moments where I'm blessed to be a polyglot. So I speak a lot of languages. So for me, it's normal. But yeah, I sometimes don't realize how cool it is.
How rare as well. How rare it is as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's I was with my friend the other day, and the fried chicken place in Mango Bridge at the end near the Super Value is a Croatian business. And so the ladies there, when the owner's there, I just go in, start speaking Croatian, blah, 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 blah. and everyone around is looking at me like, what the hell is wrong with this brown
That is
guy?
the brownest Croatian guy I've ever seen in my
brown guy
life.
speaking some funny language, said like Arabic or that's what they're looking at me like. What is happening here? Is
This
something
doesn't compute. The matrix is falling apart.
But I've had it a few times. Like we took a Samoan group to New Caledonia, and because I took French in high school, I was the translating person. So I'm speaking French to these guys, and after a while, the host stopped speaking to me in English and only spoke French.
Wow.
And so I'll be like, oh yeah, what he means is, and I'll say it back to them in English. And, and you got these islanders who are just looking at you like, why the hell do you know French? It's Samoans especially are not very multilingual people. We're not very like, we have to go out and learn multiple languages. Like Europeans, normal to speak 3-4 languages. Where Samoans like English, Samoan, finished. That's it. Tongans are a bit more open, English, Samoan, and Tongan. But Samoans, there's only 2 languages on this earth I need to know, and that's it.
Well, there's no need to learn French if you're not going to go anywhere, right?
Yeah. I just needed it to get it through high school.
I took French, and I think I barely passed. And even now, I don't even remember jack shit. But that I had no ideas of going to France or anything like that. Well, there's a lot of people who did learn French, did get opportunities to go out there and really practice it. I mean, who the fuck was I going to speak French to in Tonga? Really? My French teacher? No, that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
Man, that's so crazy. Because just going through your YouTube stuff, you guys sing really, really good. But that's no surprise being Samoan and Islanders. The singing's not the... But like... I don't know, maybe my mind just can't compute that you guys are singing Croatian and just looking at all the comments, and it's like comments of people just saying how amazing you guys are and how how you guys are pronouncing the words really well and all these things. So it must be crazy. It must have been a crazy time for you during that. Was it last year? Did you say? Was it last year?
Yeah, for the last 2 years.
Last 2 years. That's kind of fucked now during COVID, I'm guessing.
As soon as Sydney announced that you don't have to quarantine coming from New Zealand, I got a call that day.
Really?
And they're like, when are you coming? We'll
pay.
That
was quick. Holy.
Sydney, Canberra, you got people in the States. When are you guys coming? People, it's a very, very, it's a very privileged place to be in, to have supporters and a market that genuinely loves you for what you do. And they, like the other day I got sent 2 bottles from Germany, because when I travel the world, I only drink this plum vodka, Croatian plum vodka, and Austin only drinks Jack Daniels, my brother. And then I just got a package out of nowhere, and it says, hey, it's from Germany, and they said, oh, we thought you might have run out. So here's some, saw this and thought of you and hope you,
And that's from a fan or from someone that you know?
From a fan. I never met this person.
Wow.
In Croatia, in Germany, but they're Croatian.
Yeah.
And so it's funny because COVID forced me to get into communications as a business and to start a small business around that. And I was doing it initially around social media. But then what I've realized doing the campaign, doing all these things, is that the world has fundamentally shifted to, it's no longer enough to sell a product. You actually have to be about something. You have to stand for something. You have to take a stand for a certain person. And that's what we discovered doing Croatian. You can go and have better singers singing Croatian, but you will not take our market, because we are now Croatian through and through. Like, we know that, if you ask me, I know what they eat, who they listen to, and my certain subsection of the market, I know their political views. I know, down to, exactly, what their religion will be, who they would vote for, everything. I know everything about them. And that's who we, and that's who we're for. And that's who we, and it's not just, we're for these people. We built relationships with these people. Like, people say, well, what's the hardest part about touring? And I said, the hardest part is actually doing the work to build the relationships when you are just exhausted and yet you're going to another dinner to say the same story. When you're sitting there and you've taken 2 or 3 hours of photos and they ask you the same questions. And to build those relationships, when someone says, hey, can I take you out for breakfast tomorrow morning? And you're looking at and it's like 5:30 in the morning. They're like, what time? Like 9 o'clock? Okay, yeah, let's do it.
Let's go.
And there have been so many times where I had just been, run off my feet, just, 20, 48 hours, no sleep, and still got to show up to the meeting, and talk to people and build that relationship, hear their story. It's the hardest part about it, because to you said the story millions of times. You've sung these songs millions of times, broken record millions and millions of times. But to this person, it's an incredible story. It's amazing, and it's a new experience for them, and they want it, And so that's the hardest part. But provided me huge insights into the business that I have today. And I've been able to get clients from it because I am a professional networker. I said, we land into a city, don't know anyone, and yet, I've managed to organize where we're staying, where we're going to eat, who's, where we're performing, who's blah, 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 all these things. And you just build your network out that way. And like I said, I got people all over the world where if I needed something, I know for sure I could call them, and they would be more than happy to help. And that is the real blessing from all of it. The traveling's okay.
Yeah. Traveling's a bonus.
We're not really good tourists. We were in Paris, we were having a nap, and they're like, hey, you guys want to go sightseeing? Nah. And they're like, you guys don't want to see anything? Nah. Sacré-Cœur? Nah. Louvre? What's that? The museum? Mona Lisa? Does she look any different? Smaller? Nah. No. And then they're like, what about Eiffel Tower? Hey, you want to see the Eiffel Tower? Yeah, why not? Okay, we go. We're driving around freaking half an hour, and this guy's going around and around the Eiffel Tower. I go, what the hell's wrong?
Oh, we're not going to get out.
I said, what are we? And he goes, I'm looking for a park. I go, no, stop. God. We stopped, got out, took a photo. Okay, let's go.
Let's go.
And they're like, you don't want to go up? I said, well, what's up there? It's just, we're just not tourists like that. I just take the photo because it's cool. Guys from Angry, self-managed. That's the biggest thing. Like self-managed. We can do whatever we want. We have our own thing. We can say whatever we want. It's just a huge blessing. We did the same thing with, we drove 4 hours out to Grand Canyon. After 20 minutes, like, okay, let's go.
Oh, man. The tour guide must have been pissed.
Oh, she was all right.
It's kind of a big thing for them.
We, went up the World Trade Center in New York and stuff like that. And you just, we're in Berlin and you just got it's just, after a while, you're just like, I like the places. Okay, cool. But for us, it's the people. It's the huge blessing. People that are just willing to move heaven and earth to help you. And they get nothing. Most of our friends, most of the people around work get nothing out of it. And yet, they give us so much. Like, we could never repay what we've received from our supporters, from our fans, from our friends. So for me, it's just, just a huge, like I said, it's a huge privilege.
Damn, it sounds like it. Sounds like quite a journey you guys have been on.
Huge journey.
Far out.
Exhausting.
Yeah, I can imagine. Geez, that's just the sound of 46 countries. I'm already like, fuck, I don't even want to go to one country.
No,
46?
No, 46. We spent 42 weeks of the year.
Oh, 42? Well, there goes my listening skills out the fucking door.
42 weeks of the year. We went to about, I think, 20-something countries.
That's still a big number, dude. Yeah.
And we will be flying close to between 4 to 9 flights a week.
Damn. So I just got a couple of things more before before I keep you here too long and people start wondering where the fuck you've gone.
Yeah.
National obviously didn't do too well this year round, right?
Not kidding.
Man. Okay. They kind of bombed pretty hard.
Yeah.
What was the reason behind that? Was it just the campaigning? Was it just the people they were up against? Was it just the state of New Zealand at the time due to the coronavirus? What the fuck was happening?
National lost because we did exactly the same thing that the Clintons did in the 2016 election, which is we had no message and no alternative vision, compelling vision for the future of New Zealand, and instead we ran our whole campaign on the other guys suck.
Yeah. Okay.
We had no message. No. I was reading this last night. It says, if branding is a promise that you make, then a great brand is a promise that you've kept. And National, we just couldn't ride any promise that we've kept recently.
Was there like a lot of just disagreements within the party itself, or was it just too short of a time frame?
We only had the economy to work with, you know, and we kept saying, the GFC. It was like 2008, for goodness sake.
Yeah. Who the fuck's still talking about the GFC?
It's like more than a decade ago.
Jeez,
You know,
yeah.
we had no new promise that we've kept to the country.
Mm.
So that's number one. Number two was the leadership of Jacinda Ardern was very effective. And we did not have what it took to beat her. And so there's a book called The Constitutions. It's written in the early 20th century. It talks about the role of the monarchy and of government in the British whatever. And it says there are two essential pillars of what it takes to govern. One is the efficient and one is the dignified. So dignified is the personification of the values, hopes, and aspirations of a people, tribe, or nation. The efficient is that which is charged with the well-being and prosperity of a nation. So, in a perfect world, the dignified would be Jacinda.
Mm.
She embodies what it means to be Kiwi. Kindness, tolerance, inclusivity, diversity, warmth. What we think of ourselves when we think New
Or
Zealand.
would like to think of ourselves, sure.
Yeah, okay. Efficient, the people who actually can get results for New Zealand, is national.
Mm.
So it would, in a perfect world, Jacinda would be Prime Minister and national would be the government.
Mm.
That's not how New Zealand works, though. So in times of crises, people move towards the dignified. When everything else goes, everything else is in shit, we need to at least know that we are what we stand for. That's what people do.
Mm.
National did not understand this. And we kept pushing the economy.
Mm.
And we keep pushing that they're inefficient and that they are useless and unable to build Kiwi build and light rail and everything. But we are attacking the dignified on what it means to be inefficient. That's why it didn't stick with Jacinda. It just did not stick.
Off.
Because we know that her team sucks. We're not judging her by that. We're judging her by she stands for the values that we hold.
Mm.
And for the aspirations that we hold, and for everything that we think ourselves to be as a person, as a country. So, how should National have won?
Mm.
We had to build an anti-Jacinda. We had to build our own version of a dignified. And we didn't do that.
Mm.
And Judith kept prosecuting the same thing. She went the same line that Simon did, and stuff like that. Now, at the second lockdown, and I did a video on this on my business page, second lockdown, all Judith had to do from that point on is say, from now on, the country is hurting.
Mm.
I feel your pain and I empathize with your pain. No more nastiness. No more nothing. From this point on, even though you've said that Jacinda is the auntie of the nation, I will be the mother of the nation. Mm. Whatever she needs to govern, to get us out of this shit, National will put up.
Wow.
We will support. Whatever it takes for us to come out of this as a country, when the election comes, the election will come. But whatever they need right now while we're in a crisis, we will do.
So they needed to appeal to the emotions of the country as opposed to
anyone who thinks sales is nothing but emotions.
Yeah. So that's where they got it wrong, and that makes sense because you didn't.
But listen to my pitch.
Okay, let's hear.
You heard it.
Yeah.
Do you not think people would have voted for that?
No. I think it would. I still don't think they would have won. I think it would have been.
No, but we wouldn't have got 20. We wouldn't have got 24%.
It would have been more.
I reckon we would have got 39, 40%.
No, I agree. We
would have got 40%. Sure. We would have been able to save our MPs, build a really good case to come back in the next election.
Oh, no,
we would not have been slammed right up the arse like we were.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And your pitch is absolutely correct because no one wants to fucking hear that. People who are actually
Nobody wants a whining bitch for 3 years. That's all National has done. Whining, complaining, and then turn around and say, why didn't you pick me? Fuck off. Are you serious? Are you serious? Yeah. Like that,
Yeah, of course.
And I'm hardcore National through and through, all of that stuff. I don't mind that stuff. I don't mind. But with National people, let's get together, talk shit about the other guys.
Yeah.
But to the country, Hello, we're in politics. There are only 3 reasons why we do stuff in politics. Win the votes, to get into government, to do what's right for the country. That's it. That's why we're in politics. Everything else, the posturing, the handshaking, the game of parliament, all of that, is fucking useless. If you're not in government, you can't make any changes. And so, for me, I'm just like, do what it takes to win. That's what these people don't understand. Do what it takes to win. Back to my thing in the beginning. Be the best. Do what it takes to win. If you have to outwork, if you have to change your messaging, and we did this in Mangere. Before the second lockdown, we were going on about traditional values, about pro-life stuff like that. And then I read a book by Seth Godin, and it said, whereas most people think that business is about finding a problem and giving a solution, he says the step before that is tell them something that they've been dying to hear. And I sat back and I said, shit, we're not saying anything that anyone wants to hear right now.
No, not at all.
I said, nobody wants to hear a sermon from a political party. And so I stopped. I changed the whole campaign. And I rang Agnes and I said, from now on, we only talk about women aspiration, Pasifika, women empowerment, Pasifika aspiration, business, South Auckland success stories, all of that, because that's where we, and that had huge cut through. It was doing so well. And because I'm not too proud to say this is not working, I want to win.
Of course.
I want to freaking win. I want to win because only when you win can you actually make a difference. And that's why I don't like the left, because they only want to complain, but they don't want to do what it takes to win. Like, I am proud of them for rigging the American election. Do what it takes to win.
They don't look like they're doing it well, though.
Yeah, they're fucking useless. Who the hell gets to 3:30 in the morning and goes, stop the counting, we need to bring in some more ballots, and then doesn't even know that you put 130 of them, 130,000, 130,000, hello, make sure some of them go to Trump so it doesn't look so suspicious. Stupid morons, can't even rig an election properly. But hey, I admit, do what it takes to win. But, that's the whole national, we really, really, really need to understand our message right now. And we will have the same problem. That's why we lost in the last election. That's why we lost this election, because we don't have an anti-Jacinda. We don't have one. We don't have a dignified that we can hold up to say, this person embodies the values and aspirations and beliefs that we hold as a country. We had that in John Key. Everyone, the Kiwi dream, John Key. And now it's the empathetic leader, the kindness. I hate the word kind. If anyone says be kind to me, I slap them, because it's just, I hate that word so much, but it works. That's where we are as a country. You got to do it.
Do you think Judith was the right person, though?
Judith was
embody that.
Judith was the only person left at that point.
So okay,
that's why fucking Todd Muller should be out. Who the hell leads a mutiny and then doesn't even have the stomach to see it through? Should be out. Like in the old days, you led a coup and it failed.
And then you run it, yeah. Well, if it failed, yeah.
If it failed and you didn't have the stomach, you got the knife and ran yourself through, or walked the plank. Have some dignity. This guy's still sitting there after the mess that he started before Todd Muller's coup. National was tracking down, but the real thing that led us on the end, the real thing that our voters said to us, our base said to us, is we can't trust you guys to keep your shit together. How can you tell a strong team and you guys don't even know who's on your team?
It definitely wasn't a good look coming into the elections, which is the unfortunate side of things. So listen, I know you've recently started a business. Do you want to sort of explain what you're sort of doing at the moment and maybe chuck in some plugins for where people can sort of find that out? Just
my business?
I caught you off guard there a little bit.
Yeah. So my business is in communications, but specializing in game-changing stuff. So I like high stakes, big challenges. So if you're someone who just wants to get a little bit better in your industry, then I'm not the person for you. If you're someone who wants to absolutely stand out, like change the game completely, like fuck shit up, then that's where I'm more interested in, and so I've got a few clients right now in real estate, in manufacturing and stuff that I work with, and my whole end goal is to just change the industry completely, look at where the market's heading, and I do that more for scratch my own itch. I love it, I love the campaign. I do because I want to, like I say, people play video games. I play in life. I want to see if this hypothesis works. I want to read something and be like, how can I apply that? And then go for it. You know, like most of the stuff that I do, I read a book. I read a lot of books, actually. I go through like a book a week sometimes. And I'm just like, for me, I'm just looking for the lesson where I can just go and apply it, see if it works, see what we can get out of it. And so, yeah, that's my business called CMB Solutions. Find it on Instagram. Not really a techno-savvy kind of person, you know, but for me it's because a lot of people try and ask me for marketing advice or social media advice or social media content advice and stuff like that. And I'm like, you actually, 9 out of 10 times, most people don't know what they stand for and who they are and who they are looking to serve in the market. And in business, once upon a time, it used to be fine, you know. You have a product, solve someone's problem, that's all right, we don't care who you are. Where now, people do care. People do care what you stand for, what you're about, you know, and we've seen that in the election. Huge indication of where people are at. And so, you know, I believe, especially because we are in such a fast-paced world, once upon a time, you would be able to have a plan and live out that plan for 3, 5, 10 years. Now, if you wrote a plan on February 27 this year, that plan was defunct by March 15. If you wrote a plan on March 20th, that plan was defunct by April 20th. You know, it's like, that's how fast the world is changing. I believe businesses need to have people like me as strategists, because your competition is not your market. Your competition is the news cycle. You are competing with the news cycle. You're having to keep your finger on the pulse of the market all the time, because the market is reacting to what's Trump doing, what's Biden doing, what's Kim Kardashian's ass doing, what's all these shit doing, you know, it's up, down.
Of course.
And the market is very volatile. Market is becoming more and more human, even though we're saying everything's getting automated. The stuff that you cannot control and the stuff that makes the most difference is the human aspect of it. And that's where you're going to need now. You know, I tell people, don't have a map. What are you going to do with a map? I said, nobody uses maps now. I said, need a GPS. Need a GPS to tell you, reroute, turn right, you missed it, blah, blah, blah. You know, that bitch who keeps telling you, you know, oh, turn right here. Where is here? You know, something like that. And that's what I do for businesses, for politicians. You know, it's what I do for Agnes, and looking at getting a few high-profile politicians actually under my belt in the next few years, but I can't say them right now. But you know, because that's where the world is, and that's where the world's moving, is into that whole thing where you know, you're either creating the news or you're having to react to the news, but nobody can sit this one out anymore. We are just so interconnected. You know, if someone starts a business now and says, oh, you know, Trump 2020, you're out of business. You know, there's that bar, they had those mega hats, you know what I mean? It's all interconnected now. You need to know, you need to have a strategy around it, and you need to have a constantly developing strategy. You need to have your finger on the pulse, which most people aren't trained for. Most people that come out of our communications schools, out of our marketing schools, are trained on how to write copy, how to do this, how to create a funnel, how to get that, but they're not actually trained for real life.
Like adapting on the fly almost.
Yeah. How to deal with people, how to network, how to shake hands and get the information behind the scenes that you need to give yourself the competitive edge. So it's all becoming interconnected now, because like I said, all the stuff that you could do before has been automated. All the shit that, you know, like we talked about echo chambers, all done. Now it's the human aspect. How well can you communicate with other humans and get them on side into your, and enroll them, into your vision and what you stand for and what change you're trying to make on the world. And I think it's a very exciting time. So that's what I do.
Big job too, eh? Far out.
Oh, I love it. I've limited myself to 10 clients. I couldn't do much more than that. 10 is probably pushing it. Ideally, I'd want to do 7 and charge them super bucks. But right now, 10 I can do. You know.
So just Instagram is where you can find your business?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook. We have a website too, but I need to change the copy on all of that.
So it's not ready for
you can go have a look at it. It's still pretty good. You know, it's what's it? I think it's called cmbsolutions.com. But For me, for me right now, like I get most of my clients through referral.
Yeah.
Like I'm not really pushing a hard marketing campaign right now.
Mm.
It's through referral. It's big ticket. It's really, really people who just want to be serious and want to make a difference. And like for me, I just don't care about the money. I've made money. I've lived life. I've been a rock star. It's all shit at the end of the day. Whereas, if you can actually make that change in the world, if you can have that impact, if you can live according to your purpose and get fulfillment out of it, man, it's way better.
Funny, that meaning in life almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise you go through midlife crisis.
Unless we'd be playing games 4 hours a day.
Yeah. That's probably my biggest lesson I learned this year from Twitter was people play a lot of video games.
People do.
I've always wanted to play the Among Us game though, because I watched the TikToks on there. I think it's
What's the game?
Among Us.
Among Us. Oh, that little cartoonish.
Yeah.
I hate
and they
those
kick
games.
the person out.
I hate those little indie games. It really. I don't know why. It just pisses me off for some reason. I'm sure the gameplay is great because it's a very popular game, but I just, it's not for me. But It sounds interesting. Kicking people out and shit. So, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I think I've kept you longer than you were probably expecting.
Oh, it's all right.
But listen, if people want to reach out to you, aside from the business stuff that you're sort of pushing through, is there any way people can sort of reach out to you or talk to you for anything?
Malietoa-Brown, just anywhere. That's I don't know why people don't put their name on stuff. Like I put my name on all my social media accounts, come what may. You'll find me there, Twitter, Instagram, anywhere. I think even YouTube. I'm not sure.
Definitely on YouTube. I can say that.
Oh, well, there we are.
You're definitely on YouTube.
Christian Malietoa-Brown. That's where you find me. Yeah, that's
Cool,
where
man.
I am.
Thanks, man. Cheers.